The real difference, the biggest distinguishing difference between perimenopause and menopause is the cycles, right? Perimenopause, you may have very irregular cycles. Your cycles may get super heavy, like crime scene periods and clots, or they may get very erratic, 2 weeks here, 4 weeks there, 6 weeks here, and the length of bleeds can change from 4 days to 2 weeks to 30 days. Progesterone and testosterone and estrogen all have a very powerful effect on the brain in producing serotonin. Serotonin is a motility agent. Most people don't realize that. So a lot of women can get very constipated in perimenopause and menopause. We also we get a decrease in bile production. We get a decrease in the production of hydrochloric acid as well. So strength training drives insulin into cells. I mean, it's a total metabolic modulator, and the more muscle you have, the more mitochondria you have, the better you feel, the lower your risk of chronic disease, inflammation, and blood sugar issues.
The Big Silence, empowering personal experiences, inspiring compassion, and healing lives. We are no longer silent. We are here.
The Big Silence. The Big Silence.
All right. Welcome to the Big Silence podcast. Esther Blum, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Karena, for having me.
I was telling you, my community has grown up with me the past 16 years through Tone It Up, and we are all just getting big girls now. And we're all a lot of us are in our 40s and have all these questions about perimenopause and menopause. And so I went searching for the best people and experts to talk to. So I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm stoked to really blow this out of the water for your audience.
Yeah. So it seems like the conversation around peri and menopause is so prevalent right now. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm in that stage or if we're finally getting the attention and recognition and studies that women have needed for a long time. Because I'm like, is it kind of like when you buy a blue car, you see blue cars all the time? Or are we actually getting more attention?
Yeah, both. It's both. But really, I mean, there's documentaries coming out. There are, so many books coming out. And thank God, unlike 1.2 billion of us will be in menopause before 2030. Every woman goes through it, whether it's surgically, chemically, or biologically. And it is not taught in medical schools to this day. The multiple choice answers on the test are for treatment of menopausal women. It's either A, birth control and antidepressants, or B, hormones. And the answer is still A. So I mean, even this morning, I spent explaining to a client, really doing damage control because her hormone illiterate provider told her that if she went on HRT full time, even though her hormones are in the toilet, that would act like birth control and extend her periods. I was like, this is a person who knows nothing about hormones. So, and I'm a dietitian, I'm not a doctor, but right. I'm like, I don't care. I'm educating women as much as I need to because it's unacceptable and egregious. And if you're a GYN or a provider and you have woman after woman coming to you with menopausal symptoms, and all you do is offer her a birth control pill or tell her to do shots of Benadryl or have a glass of wine at night or just have more sex when she's having very painful dry sex, then shame on you. Then you should lose your license, in my opinion. That's very lazy medicine, unacceptable. And how you look people in the eye and normalize suffering is unacceptable.
I agree with that. And I'll share, I had another conversation on this topic and I had a community question. I'll share it with you because I think you'll be appalled by this. Someone went to the doctor and she is in peri and has gained weight in her abdominal area. And she's like, well, I know I'm in peri. Like, what should I do? I'm getting married soon and I can't get the weight off. Is there change of diet, whatever? And the doctor said, well, if you don't like the extra weight on your belly, just get liposuction.
Wonderful.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's pretty dismal. So, yeah, what is out there? But please, anyone listening, understand this is the gloom and doom portion, but please know there is a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. There really is.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of good information here. And I want to start,
Yes.
can we start with perimenopause? What it is, what are the symptoms? Because a lot of us don't even know that we're having them.
That's right. And a lot of women don't know because perimenopause often starts as early as 35, which it sounds like that was
Yeah.
the number in your case. And a lot of women go from having children right into perimenopause. And they think, oh, it's postpartum, but it's really perimenopause. So the real difference, the biggest distinguishing difference between perimenopause and menopause is the cycles, right? Perimenopause, you may have very irregular cycles. Your cycles may get super heavy, like crime scene periods and clots, or they may get very erratic, 2 weeks here, 4 weeks there, 6 weeks here. And the length of bleeds can change from, 4 days to 2 weeks to 30 days. So but there's, what is common in both scenarios, both perimenopause and menopause, is 40 to 50 symptoms, anything from joint aches and pains, increase in migraines, insomnia, weight gain, vaginal dryness, breast and nipple tenderness, irritability, inability to put on muscle, digestive changes, cognitive changes, lack of focus, anxiety, depression, inability, lack of drive to like participate in life. So I believe I said hot flashes. There are
Yeah.
so many different symptoms, right? And then menopause is really just 12 consecutive months without a period. However, your symptoms don't necessarily just up and disappear. If left untreated, you can continue to suffer with hot flashes. I have women I have treated in my practice in their mid 70s, and they say, Esther, I want to come off hormones. I say, I don't think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, no, I want to do it. So they do. And their hot flashes immediately return. Insomnia immediately returns. So does vaginal dryness, hair loss, skin changes. All of these things don't resolve. You would never take a diabetic who required insulin off insulin. You wouldn't take a woman with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's who is on thyroid medication off her thyroid medication. So hormones really are a long-term endeavor. And people say, how long should I take them? And I say, until you're dead.
Yeah.
And I mean it. It's true.
Yeah.
It's a quality of life issue. But also, there are published research studies. You guys, you can go to pubmed.com and look this up yourself. This is nothing we can't all access. Early intervention with HRT starting in perimenopause, but within 10 years of menopause, reduces all-cause mortality by 40%, which is tremendous.
Wow.
If you and really the first 2 to 3 years of menopause is where you see the greatest benefits in preventing loss of gray matter in the brain, plaquing in the arteries, insulin resistance, bone density, bone loss. And what is the greatest killer of women above the age of 65? It is hip fractures
Mm-hmm.
and bone breaks, but also UTIs can kill you
Right.
as well. They really can. So, and they'll cause, status and mental change status, and they will really put you at increased risk for all sorts of problems. So we can empty out nursing homes by giving women vaginal estrogen, bioidentical hormones, and doing it as close to menopause, if not in perimenopause, as possible.
So if you're a woman and you believe you're going to perimenopause, you're in it, menopause, how do you approach your doctor? What can you say when you want to stand up for yourself? You're like, no, I know this is happening and I want to get my hormones checked and I want to get on hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. And often what women unfortunately hear is hormones cause cancer, to which you can say to your doctor, I have done the research. There is not one published study that shows that HRT causes cancer. Cancer is so multifactorial. having alcohol every day is a far greater risk of an increase in cancer. So there's so many lifestyle pieces and environmental pieces to cancer. It's not just hormones, A. B, how can hormones that have been in our bodies our entire lives immediately start to cause cancer when we go into menopause, especially given that doctors are prescribing women birth control for upwards of 30 years at a time easily, or IUDs. So, A, you can say to your doctor, please show me the studies because I have done extensive research and I have found zero studies to show that they cause cancer. Number two, you can say there are FDA approved hormones that I can get through my insurance. I would like to start an estrogen patch, oral micronized progesterone, which is prometrium, and vaginal estrogen to treat my vaginal dryness. Now, some doctors will say if you are taking systemic estrogen, you don't need vaginal estrogen. However, if you want to prevent urethral and clitoral atrophy, a dab will do you a couple times a week. And I believe in the power of both to really keep the vaginal tissue stretchy and elastic.
Yeah.
What if you have, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, yeah, let's jump into the vaginal canal and pelvic floor during menopause and all those
Yes.
changes going on there.
Yes, but one more thing with the
Yep.
doctor conversation too. If they're like, well, I don't know, you could say, listen, I'm happy to sign a waiver. Just give this to me for 3 months and see how I do.
Mhm.
Okay. And then during that 3 months, please go find a more hormone literate doctor because you will suffer. You should never be guiding your own menocare. And so you can call a local compounding pharmacy. You can Google functional medicine GYN or functional medicine hormone expert, right? And you go to someone who's going to give you transdermal estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, vaginal estrogen.
What are
So the pelvic, go
so
ahead.
so one question on what are your
Yes.
thoughts on topical progesterone?
Topical progesterone is okay if you are in your 30s and not going through perimenopause.
Yeah.
Progesterone topically, the molecules are very large. They are hard to absorb. Topical testosterone is much easier to absorb. It's a smaller molecular size, but topical progesterone, that's something you can use if you want to sustain a pregnancy, or maybe you want to use it the second half of your cycle if you're just having some bad PMS. But other than that, especially in perimenopause and menopause, you need oral micronized progesterone to hit up the GABA receptors in the brain so you feel calm, your anxiety subsides, your depression lifts, and you sleep through the freaking night. Okay.
Doesn't that sound
So,
heavenly?
heavenly, because we all know nobody's losing fat when they're insomniacs with insulin resistance. So,
Mhm.
no,
Yeah.
you need to sleep for your fat loss. Yes. Okay, so your pelvic floor question.
Yes.
Okay. So, we have normalized pelvic floor dysfunction. We never get follow ups after childcare, right? I
Mm.
remember my bestie saying to me, sex is going to hurt for a good year after childbirth. And she was right.
Mm.
I had no idea I had pelvic floor dysfunction. And I kept going to gynecologists, urologists. Finally, my girlfriend was like, you should probably see a pelvic floor therapist, who I now call my Vagician. She's awesome. So, with the decline in estrogen and progesterone, you lose elasticity and hydration in the vaginal walls. So, I don't know about you, but having sex feeling like your vaginal walls are on fire and dry as the Sahara is
Not fun.
not exactly a
Mhm.
turn on. Number two, you become much more prone to UTIs.
Mhm.
You may notice all of a sudden you're like, I'm having all these UTIs. If I was having bladder leaks post childbirth, now it's like I really can't control. Do you see the Depends commercials? How much younger the women are? Depends used to only be advertised for elderly. Now it's like women in their 30s and 40s,
Oh.
right? Number three, you can have all sorts of bladder prolapse without vaginal estrogen. I mean, the hinges come undone. So, we really want to make sure that you're coupling vaginal estrogen both internally and to the labia and urethra and clitoris. a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week for life. And it stays very localized. People are like, what if I've had cancer? It's the Framingham Nurses Study looked at women who use vaginal estrogen for 18 years. It doesn't raise your serum levels of estrogen at all. It's safe to use. And number two, you do want to do pelvic floor therapy because you do want to retrain. If your pelvic muscles are weak, you want to strengthen them because it can make it harder to empty your bladder and also poop properly. Or if you're like me and like a total clencher, and everything is super tight, you want to do pelvic floor therapy to work out the trigger points, relax the pelvic floor. So also you can empty your bladder, have full orgasms, enjoy yourself, all the things.
So many fun things here. So many fun things.
So much to talk about. So many vaginas, so little time.
Yeah, because even with the vagina, like walls, like it's the pain, like why is it so painful though?
Because without proper collagen production, you cannot lubricate. You cannot self-lubricate. So doctors will say, oh, get some lube, get some KY. All right, well, that's not getting to the root of the problem, and it's still going to lead to atrophy of the vaginal walls.
Yeah.
So the last thing we want to do is atrophy. We want to rebuild collagen. Like here we are putting on hyaluronic acid and getting microneedling on our face. Why are we not treating our vaginal walls the same way? I mean, there are also some FDA approved laser therapies for vaginal walls. Please never do this at a med spa. Only go through a licensed physician or provider office on this. You can experience burning there. If they're not used properly, they can be damaging too. But for the most part, yes, vaginal estrogen and pelvic floor therapy go a long way. And along those lines, if your libido is still in the tank, if you're on hormones, your libido is still rough, you can add in DHEA vaginally, which also lubricates, hydrates, and you can add in vaginal testosterone too, and that can really help with libido too.
I hope all the ladies listening are taking notes this entire episode. So what changes in our gut health? I know I've heard a lot about possible constipation being in peri, and I know it's important to have all of our systems working well. So what happens there?
Yes. So first of all, with a drop in production of progesterone, right? Progesterone and testosterone and estrogen all have a very powerful effect on the brain in producing serotonin. Serotonin is a motility agent. Most people don't realize that. So a lot of women can get very constipated in perimenopause and menopause. We also we get a decrease in bile production. We get a decrease in the production of hydrochloric acid as well. And so during this time, I do I do hormone, blood, and stool tests on every woman that comes into my practice. And often what we see on the stool test is a real deficiency in hydrochloric acid, which manifests as overgrowth of H. pylori, overgrowth of very pro-inflammatory bacteria, very low levels of what's called akkermansia, which controls our blood sugar, very important. So it is important that you do clean up the gut because if you're constipated, you're not detoxing your hormones, you're not pooping out your estrogen. So I do look at an enzyme in my gut test called beta glucuronidase. This helps your gut have what's called phase 3 detoxification. 1 and 2 are in the liver. 3 is in the gut. So we really want to make sure that we kill off bacteria and candida and H. pylori that don't belong there. 2, we repopulate with healthy colonies of essential or commensal bacteria that make up our microbiome. And C, we put fire in the belly. We make sure that you're either producing on your own good hydrochloric acid or we add in as a supplement because bacterial overgrowth doesn't happen when you have that firewall of hydrochloric acid. And hydrochloric acid also helps with belly bloating, helps you digest and absorb your nutrients. We see with the decrease in bile acid production, we see a lot of women with fat in their stool. So they're not absorbing their fat soluble nutrients. They are depressed and sad, like low vitamin D. Woo, that is a recipe for depression. There's seasonal affective disorder right there. And so, yes, you may have a vitamin D deficiency, but you also probably have a digestive insufficiency as well.
Okay, so let's talk about food and nutrition. And do we change what we eat once we enter perimenopause? How
This
and
is
why?
actually, yeah. So, hello, my queen, protein, right?
Yeah.
This is the time with that drop in hormones, we lose the most amount of muscle in the shortest period
Hmm.
of time. We really develop what's called sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss.
Yeah.
So we can be lifting and go into the gym and doing all the things and not putting on muscle because we are not eating enough protein. The
Yeah.
minimum amount any woman should be eating across the board is 100 grams minimum per day.
Right.
Most women, yeah, go
It should
ahead.
be a pound or per pound, 1 gram if you can.
Yes,
And that's
1 gram per pound of body weight.
yeah.
Yes. So I love to roast my clients. I'm like, look at you. Like you've got the protein intake of a dialysis patient on like 60 to 80 a day. I'm like, dear Lord, no wonder you are like circling the drain here, feeling exhausted, having brain fog, no energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we menopause is the time to actually fuel and refeed. Most of us have been dieting. We've been restricting carbs. Keto can work great short term for getting rid of hot flashes, but then your adrenals and thyroid conk out. And spoiler alert, there's also a decrease in thyroid function in peri and menopause too, if your hormones and gut function are off. So I really love to refeed carbs.
Hmm.
Oh, well, back to protein too.
Yeah.
I mean, really try and get women on 120 to 150, depending on what they're
Yeah.
lifting and working out or not working out.
Yeah. I think the discussion on protein, we should hit that a little more because
Yes.
I know how much protein I'm supposed to be eating, and it's hard sometimes and so
Yeah.
I
How much are
literally,
you supposed to be eating?
I'm 155.
Yeah.
So I literally get bags of pre-made hard-boiled eggs and just like pop the eggs. It's
Pop
like
'em.
it's pre-made chicken in the fridge. Pop a little chicken breast. Like you gotta be conscious of it because otherwise, if you're just having 3 meals or just grazing through the day, and I need to track my protein better because I know I'm not eating enough even when I try. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely lifting weights is so important. And now,
Yeah.
because we're talking about our losing muscle. And so, ladies, like a lot of women are afraid of the eating too much protein because we were told that protein, like some myth, protein will turn into fat. And,
And bulk you
yeah,
up
and
when you
bulk you up.
left.
And when you left, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty lean and I'm lifting 20, 25 pounds on press,
Yeah.
like dumbbells each, or like doing,
Right.
and ladies, it does not bulk you up. You need it.
It does not. You don't have the testosterone to
Yeah.
bulk you up. You're not Michael Phelps or Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're not.
Yeah.
So it's never going to happen. But and especially if you're not eating enough protein, you're not going to bulk at all. And here's the best news of all is that protein is the only nutrient that raises and that really shuts off the hunger
Hmm.
hormones in the brain, but B, they really raise and sustain serotonin and dopamine. So you get 4 to 6 ounces of a protein in the morning, and your mental focus is going to be so great. You're not going to be going for that chocolate and coffee at 3 p.m. with the crash. You're just going to have a much better experience in controlling and regulating your food.
Yeah. And what is your opinion on plant-based versus animal-based protein?
You are going to get a much more efficient conversion to muscle mass with animal protein. Animal proteins have a complete profile of essential amino acids. If you do, I mean, I don't take on plant based vegans in my practice because I can't help them. I don't see results. The blood work is a mess. Everyone is so severely deficient in ferritin, which is the storage form of iron, and the thyroid function is dead. Nutrient deficiencies are abound. So it's not that I don't love people who are vegans. It's just, I'm going to be a waste of your time and money. I can't get the results I do with people who are eating red meat, chicken, eggs, fish,
Mhm.
butter, olive oil, avocado, but real animal fats, rabbit, chicken, turkey, all the things. So if you are plant-based though, you should absolutely consider supplementing with branched chain aminos, with essential aminos, just so you can get some amino acids and work at building muscle. And yes, I know there's vegan bodybuilders out there, but for the most part, you look at even soy, it lacks methionine that you need to build muscle. So it's just not, you have to eat 2 cups of quinoa to get the same protein as in a 4-ounce chicken breast.
It's
It's
already
just so
hard enough.
inefficient.
It's already hard enough.
Already hard enough. What are we doing here? Now, a lot of women do say, like, I've lost my taste for red meat. I can't digest it well. When we clean up your gut, then you'll start digesting it again. So, yes, that is a reality. But in the meantime, you could certainly get it from, white meat, poultry, and eggs. And, you can add some protein powders if you tolerate dairy. Cottage cheese is a great protein source. So,
Yeah.
all very doable.
Have you heard any studies about like a dip in appetite going through peri and menopause?
I typically get women telling me they have an increase in appetite,
Yeah.
However, for people, occasionally I get people who say they have less of an appetite. A, they're usually less mobile, less active than they were. And B, again, if I have a woman with parasites and GI upset and she's having loose stools and bloating, then yes, once we clean up the gut, it's like, oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
So you were about to go in about carbs.
Carbs. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, ladies, I spend more time refeeding my clients than I do dieting them down. Most of the time, I have to diet up my ladies. They come to me eating 900 to 1100 calories a day, which is like not even enough to keep you breathing or your brain functioning properly. So 1200 calories a day is the lowest anyone should go to. And most of my ladies are not training for any comps. So we're not really cutting, we're really replenishing. So I love to ramp women up on carbs. It's going to really refuel and wake up your dead thyroid. Okay. Carbs help convert T4 to T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone. So very important. Number 2, you're going to sleep better. If you don't want to have so many carbs during the day, you finally make you a little sleepy, have at least 40 grams at night. This is a cup to cup and a half, depending on if it's butternut squash or acorn squash versus like rice or lentils or sweet potatoes. You can read the labels, but the nutrition labels. But carbs at night are going to give you, even when paired with protein and fiber, they're going to give you a slight bump in insulin. Well, what does that do? That tamps down your cortisol so you can actually sleep at night, because many of you listening are probably waking up 2, 3, 4 in the morning and not falling back asleep. You're getting a very nice cortisol spike, either from the glass of wine you had at dinner, or working out too late, or just a lot of stress, or a real deficiency in hormones. So carbs are really fantastic for optimizing sleep. But guess what? They're also going to give you energy throughout the day and happiness. So I'm not talking about Twizzlers and
No. Ice cream.
and ice cream and sugary alcoholic drinks. Oh, I'm really talking about fresh fruit, vegetables, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, rice, legumes, hummus, butternut, acorn, squash, turnips, parsnips, the good quality root vegetables, whole food carbs. If you're super lean and you enjoy some breads, there are some actual good quality breads out there. But
I think you'd be proud of my dinner last night. We grilled a big old bone-in steak and grilled sweet potatoes and broccolini. It was so good.
Beautiful. Yeah. It can really be simple too.
Yeah.
You don't need recipes. You can just meal prep or cook. Every week I cook a pack of chicken breasts, a pack of thighs. We cook burgers, we do steaks, and then we do shrimp and or fish.
Yeah,
And that's our repertoire. It's
I know.
easy.
You can be basic. It doesn't have to be a
Basic.
dinner that takes hours. It's like put some seasoning on, throw it on the grill. Simple, simple, done. Put a tray bacon with your sweet potatoes and veggies and proteins. Season, done.
That's it.
And meal prep is
That's it.
great on Sundays. A lot of times it's grill that chicken. I know it can be boring sometimes, but I mean, getting that many grams of protein in is hard. That's why boring egg whites are my go-to, because it's only 5 grams of protein per egg. So
Yes, but you put half a cup of them with 2 whole eggs, and then you're like really getting 40 grams, 30, 40 grams a meal. So,
yeah.
right.
So you've mentioned alcohol a couple times. So I want to talk
Mm.
about alcohol and coffee and how it affects women and the liver during
Yeah.
this phase.
Yeah. Well, your ability to detoxify both caffeine and alcohol sadly decreases with age. Sorry. But B, alcohol puts the pause on fat burning for 4 days after a cocktail. It slows down your thyroid function. And most importantly, it's a class 1 carcinogen. And so your liver has to decide when you have a cocktail, it says, should I detox my hormones or should I detox alcohol? Nope, I'm going to detox alcohol first. And says to your hormones, especially estrogen, hold please. So you can be estrogen dominant 25% of your day, even if one cocktail every night, which is also going to disrupt your REM sleep,
Mm-hmm.
keep your cortisol spiking up so you fall asleep really well. And then ding, at 3 a.m, you are wide awake again.
Like
So,
everyone I know is like, I get up at 3 or 4, but I'm like, I usually get up at 4 because normally I would wake up at 6, but I have to pee by 4 a.m. So
yes.
is that normal? It's just,
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely can happen. Most women do have to pee at least once a night, but alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormones. So you will be up more than once a night peeing on top of it.
yeah.
So, am I saying never drink again? No, I don't live an alcohol free life, but I'm going to tell you, I'm really darn judicious when I use it
Mm-hmm.
because you will also find all that lack of sleep and puffy and
Mm-hmm.
blowiness just makes you really irritable the next day, too.
Yeah.
Kat, go ahead.
Can we talk about, I get so many questions about this. In your book,
Yes.
you call it the menopot. Mm. Eh. It's like, where did this come from? It's interesting for myself. I stopped weighing myself when I was going through peri, and I was like, what's happening? And my doctor's like, you're not going through peri. I'm like, yes, I is. I have this symptom, this. And I'm gaining weight and I'm not eating differently. I'm still working out. And then once I was through that, my weight just naturally was like shedding. But there's still that menopause.
Yeah. The menopot, I mean, it's really a combination. It's a cortisol belly coupled with insulin resistance. And we do experience both when we are transitioning. Your hormones can fluctuate 30% on any given day because your ovaries are trying to eke out as many hormones as they can, which are very beneficial to us. So that is really, I mean, the simple answer is optimizing your diet, right? Optimizing your protein and carbs and figuring out your tolerance. I go through all of this. I have 2 books that talk about this: See You Later, Ovulator, and Cave Women Don't Get Fat. I really teach you how to find your own unique carb tolerance. B, you want to get extra steps in, like 10 to 15,000 steps a day. And yes, that can feel like a lot. It's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes of walking. I like to bookend my days with them, like early in the morning with the dog and then late afternoon / before dinner, because that is a great way. Even walking 10 minutes after a meal lowers your blood sugar by 17%. I've worn glucose monitors just to see, and I will see, after a meal, I'm up to about 110, my breakfast meal. And by the time I'm done with my walk, it's 78.
Yeah.
So it really, I have very good blood glucose control, but a lot of people do not, and they struggle with it. So you may want to wear a continuous glucose monitor for like 2 to 4 weeks, and also see, it's another way to figure out the amount of carbs that work for you, what alcohol does to your blood sugar, what your creamer in your coffee does or your coffee does, if it's affecting you or not. That's very helpful. And also strength training, because strength training drives insulin into cells. I mean, it's a total metabolic modulator. And the
Yeah.
more muscle you have, the more mitochondria you have, the better you feel, the lower your risk of chronic disease, inflammation, and blood sugar issues.
To speak on that, because I've seen a difference. I upped my weights and
Yeah.
I need to move more. I will say, when I was in my 30s, I was working out at least an hour and a half, maybe.
Ugh, those were the days.
And I was working out a lot more. So, it's like you have
Yes.
to intentionally put it in your calendar that this is your time to go out on a walk outside or go to the gym or pick up the weights or do, like,
Yes.
you have to schedule that in. Because I will say
But
there was a phase, and along with, speaking of cortisol, with the pandemic and being my mother's caretaker and her passing all in the same years while going through all of this, I'm like, well, girl, there's your answer.
there's your answer. But also, so you'll notice none of us said go do more cardio,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're not sleeping well, if your cortisol's up and you're up at 3 a.m, you're not sleeping well, your energy's a lot lower. No matter how tired you are, you can always walk.
Mm-hmm.
And you can lift lighter weights, more reps. You could do a slower tempo, time under tension. But neither of us are telling you go do more cardio. This is the time to do more rest base, like walking and strength training, absolutely. But the other piece to this, and you brought up a really important point, is the stress. The stress
Mm-hmm.
management is more important. Getting off your phone, being more present in your life, doing some breath work every day, gratitude journals, that's also a really, really important. To me, the biggest flex is not, oh, earning money is important, but to me, the biggest flex is a regulated nervous system.
Because I know, and you can tell the difference when you're taking care of yourself, because
Mhm.
when you maybe went through a phase where you weren't. And then once you
Mhm.
pop into that schedule and that routine of taking care of yourself again, the way you move your body, the way you eat, the first day you feel different, like mentally different. And I was reading a study a couple days ago from Cambridge University, and it released an article called Severe Mental Illness in Perimenopause. And it said that women are at higher risk of suicide after or ages 45 to 49 due to peri and menopause.
Mm,
What are your thoughts on
heartbreaking.
that? I mean, is that just the hormonal change? I mean, the anxiety, the depression, the hormone, it's just, yeah.
Yes. And imagine, I have a few clients whose mothers did kill themselves. And can you imagine going through this in a vacuum and
Mm-hmm.
having no support? And the root, my grandfather was a physician. And he said to me when I was young, he said, the root cause of hysterectomy, the Latin root is hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
So women have been gaslit through the ages and just normalized their suffering and told to suck it up. And well, that's just menopause. That's what you have to go through. And not given the tools and resources necessarily to support. So, yes, it's also interesting. This demographic has the largest rates of divorce.
Really?
So I made a reel where I was like, ladies, before you go through divorce, just get on hormones
Mm-hmm.
because that might change your perspective. It really, a lot of women are like, I hate my husband right now, or I'm so angry at him, or he drives me nuts. There's been times too where I find myself extra irritable. And I'm like, just check yourself. Where are you in the process? Check in with yourself. What do you need? Do you need to adjust your hormones? What's happening? Because that is just part of it as well.
Yeah. I think it's important too to educate our partners about what we're going through, the symptoms, what we're feeling, the changes that are going on internally, mentally. And I talk to my husband about it all the time. When I'm doing research and learning myself, I go to him and say, "Hey, I just learned this," or I was like, "Oh my gosh, this happened to me. Remember this?" And if anything's going on, I'm like, "Hold on a moment. I'm just having a little hot flash. Give me a sec."
Give me a
if
second.
if I'm
I need a
irritable,
minute.
I'm like, I'm having a moment. Just stick with me. But I think education to our partners is really important too.
It is, especially because most of us are not educated, and then we get frustrated with our partners for not understanding, but understand they're not educated on either. And men, to be completely fair, they are not being told to go on testosterone
Mm.
and also manage their stress, talk about their cardiac risk. Like they're not getting the optimal care they need either. So education's needed on both sides for sure. And let's be compassionate to our partners. It's not their fault. They just truly don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we came on here, we were talking about trauma and early menopause. I would love to dive into that. And you're sharing some things with me too. And I think this is an important conversation.
Yes. If, I mean, I would say, let's see, I've been practicing for about 3 decades. At least 40% of my ladies have had some trauma with a capital T, at least 40. And I'm probably underestimating anything from rape to sexual abuse to emotional abuse, mental illness, growing up in very unstable or food insecure homes. So we know the lower the socioeconomic status, and especially women of color, go through menopause earlier. So again, the signs are often missed or mistreated. Number two, if we don't deal with this trauma, it will really kick you in the keister, because the cortisol curves, I have looked at cortisol curves of women who had severe trauma or are going through, right, a wicked divorce, right? And I've looked at the cortisol curves of women who've like processed trauma and healed. Two completely different pictures. So you can restore your cortisol curve. Now, for those of you who don't know, cortisol curve is really driven by your brain, even more so than your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys, and they are really going to have an impact on your stress. And when you go through menopause, your ovarian production of hormones stops ultimately, and your body switches over to adrenal production, a very tiny amounts of hormones, very low levels, but still something. So if you don't handle your trauma and your cortisol curve does not have a diurnal and a nocturnal curve, meaning your cortisol curve it should start to increase in the morning. That's what gets you out of bed, highest around midday, and then starts to fall gradually throughout the afternoon and then lowers at night so you can go to sleep. So a lot of women who come to see me with chronic trauma, and I could tell you, I had gotten my cortisol curve back after being really sick with mold and Lyme. And then my mom died and my cortisol curve flattened right back out again. Not as bad. I mean, I was like below the chart, like off the chart low, but a lot of women have a very flat curve, or they die in the afternoon and evening is just rock bottom. So as much as women have high cortisol from too much stress, often it's at night, and the low cortisol is during the day. And this can make it very hard to lose weight, can make you feel very fatigued, give you a lot of brain fog, just absolute no energy to work out at all. Forget it. And these poor women are like cycling and going taking spin classes, and they're like, I just got to get the weight off, and there's no gas in the tank. So healing, and I myself too also have gone through, I was molested as a child for a few years by a family member. And that too, healing that really helped me feel a million times better
Mhm.
and begin to restore my cortisol curve. And I did this with a healer, a very, very powerful healer. We did a lot of inner child work,
Mhm.
but also I used microdosing of psilocybin with cacao to really access my emotions better and go deeper and get some insights around it. So however you do it, however you decide, just work on the healing piece. Because if you don't, it will be harder to regulate your hormones. If you don't, and
Mhm.
it will be harder to regulate your nervous system. The biggest upgrade I got after doing the healing work was that I had a new operating system. I was like, the 2023 model is here. And I can see now in different situations, like what used to trigger me or upset me holds no power over me anymore. I'm not having panic attacks. I'm not stressed. I realized from the time I was 6 years old, I had anxiety and I never knew it or understood it until it was gone. And then I was like, holy cow. So every woman's journey is very different, but the pain is shared.
Yeah.
So getting support is really key. Yeah.
Is there any way to interrupt, I guess I don't know if that's the right word, but perimenopause? Say, hold on, not ready yet.
I think you can absolutely support your body through the changes.
Yeah.
I don't think you can stop the clock from ticking. However, you can put batteries in the clock to keep it running smoother.
Yeah.
So that comes in the form of really supporting adrenals through stress management, time outside in nature, ideally first thing in the morning to regulate your circadian rhythms. The sky and the sun have a light spectrum 200 times greater than an indoor light bulb, especially with LEDs are a lot of blue light versus amber light. So getting outside in nature, okay, fueling your body with very nutrient dense foods, doing breath work. Nutritionally, I love to, oh, and also let me go back, optimizing your gut function will do a huge service to you during menopause. I have gotten rid of women's hot flashes just cleaning up the gut infections. We didn't even start introducing hormones or supplements to detox hormones. Okay. And really regulating inflammation, a really good anti inflammatory diet. If you're drinking all the time, at least cutting back to like one drink a week can do wonders. As I said, keeping your blood sugar stable. And really also, this is not a food thing, but clearing house in your people that you're surrounding yourself with. At least once a year, I do inventory. And I'm like, who is just bringing me no joy? Who is not good in my space at this point? And you will see your circle gets smaller, but more meaningful when you really curate who you surround yourself with.
That is a fact. And last year alone, I had to clear 2. And then it was interesting because my husband was like, you seem so much lighter. Like my energy was lighter. And I was like, you know what? I used to spend so many hours a day having these toxic conversations or this. And like, it was draining. I want to add to that too. You said breath work, but meditation is magical. For me, it's just every day meditating and calming the nervous system. It changes within 2 minutes. You can change the way you're feeling.
Don't you also feel like the gift of grief and losing your mother, losing anybody you're close to in your life, great deep loss, I find brings, I don't know if this was your experience, but I found 4 months after losing each parent, there was this radical clarity. It was like you just couldn't unsee things anymore. All of a sudden, you were so clear on, is that like what was the catalyst for and releasing those 2 people?
I never looked at it that way, but perhaps because for my mother's relationship with me was very toxic for 30 years. And I was used to being talked to a certain way, used to accepting being treated a certain way. Yes, mamming, whatever you want, doing, just, and once she was gone, I think I realized I was like, it was like something was gone and I couldn't figure out what it was, but I wasn't missing it. And I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but there was something that was no longer holding me back.
Yeah.
And tugging on me. So
yeah, it's a very heavy weight, that it's lighter and there's something that is glorious about not having the burden of caring for a sick parent or worrying about them or, just knowing you're fine now. Everybody, I'm at peace and you've earned your peace in the journey.
Yeah. And I think once you go through that of having to talk about death with a parent and having to experience that, your perspective on a lot changes for sure.
It does. And it makes you, as painful as death and grief is, it makes you so much richer for it. And I feel like, there's a lot of compassion. There's just a real groundedness, and you really appreciate how precious life is.
Yeah.
And I find it only lit the fire under me. I was like, I am just getting started with everything there is to do in this world and see and enjoy and experience. So, it's very life affirming too, which
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was one of the last line in my memoir is, and now the healing begins. And it's like
Mm,
this new phase because I didn't know what life was like without that as my baseline. So,
mm.
anywho, I want to hear more about see you later, ovulator. What are women gonna I love the names to all of your books. Cave
Oh.
women don't get fat, eat, drink, and be gorgeous. But let's talk about your latest book.
Yes, I help. Really, this book was written. It was a love letter to all the women who have been gaslit and either in my practice or reaching out on social media, to just say, girl, we're going to help you make menopause your bitch through
Mhm.
nutrition, hormones, and self advocacy. So I really talk about, and I have a whole chapter sharing stories of women who were gaslit, but then became very empowered and had a wonderful trajectory through menopause and beyond. I also will teach you, I have meno laws for fat loss, some of which we've talked about here. I have a whole chapter on supplements also to get you through the hot flashes, the insomnia, the anxiety, having GI issues. I've gut healing protocols, bone density protocols. So there's a lot in there. And also, I educate and empower you on what tests you can have done, what to look for, what to ask for, and then how to advocate for yourself at the doctor's office, or at the provider's office. And doctors aren't the only ones who can prescribe hormones. You can also ask naturopathic physicians in many states. Nurse practitioners make excellent hormone providers as well. So there's so many options for you. And then, of course, I really give good options for eating and healing adrenals. And it's just a lot in there. I wrote it, gosh, I think I wrote the outline during the pandemic in about 5 minutes on the couch. And I was like, I think my fifth book is here now. And I just hammered it out. But then I went to the studio and recorded it too. So if
Yeah.
you are an audiobook lover, you're going to hear me read the whole thing too. And that
Amazing.
was fun.
So
Yeah.
that's yeah, I just did my audiobook. It was like a couple years later. I just wasn't ready to like read it. It's a very like
Mhm.
that this particular book is it's deep and it's my story and my mom. But so I want
Yeah.
my last question for you is what inspired you to become an integrative dietitian and all of the things that you do? You're beyond that, but
Mhm. Well, that grandfather I talked about who was a physician, so he was the tonsil king of Brooklyn. He was an ENT surgeon. He took out my tonsils.
mm,
In his house, he had an operating room, a recovery room in his
oh,
house in Brooklyn. So he was a physician. My grandmother, who put the ether mask on my face during the surgery, she used to be a dietitian, and then he trained her to be an anesthesiologist. I mean, crazy. And then my mom was a nurse, my dad was a dermatologist. So my grandfather was really pissed when I decided I wanted to go into dietetics, but I knew I didn't want to go into medical school. So I went into dietetics thinking I want to work in hospitals for a few years and then open up a private practice. All of that came true, but after working in hospitals a couple years and serving people who've had heart attacks, jello and ginger ale post-op. I mean, how are you supposed to heal a body on that and not like
not
bone broth
wild.
and electrolytes?
Wild.
I mean, it was so horrible. And the unit I worked on was a holistic unit, and they put everyone on the Dean Ornish diet, which is 60 to 70% carbs, no fat, So can you imagine what that did to people's hormones and mental state? Like total depression. It just horrible. So my mom had a cocktail party one night and she said she had a psychologist there. And the psychologist said, I'm working out with this amazing trainer who just got trained in like functional medicine, nutrition. What do you know about supplements? I said, nothing. And I had a master's degree from NYU. And I took a class called Vitamins and Minerals. And they said, you don't need supplements, everything you need is in foods. What? So, yeah, I went. And so my grandfather was helping me out with some of my student loans from grad school. And I said, can I take this money and reinvest it in a functional medicine nutrition course? And he said, sure. So that, and then when I started learning about all the research, now I had a bachelor's and a master's in clinical nutrition. And when I saw all the studies on nutrients that were never shown to us, I was pissed. I was like, I just threw away 6 years of money. I didn't throw away money and time. I mean, you need biochemistry. You need that. It's basically a pre-med degree, but it really lit my soul on fire. So when I opened up my private practice, there were 2 women who walked in. The first 2 women I saw, one was 34. She had MS. We got her symptoms into remission and her autoimmune titers leveled out. But the second woman was a therapist in menopause who could not lose that menopot. And I was like, I'm in my 20s. I better learn this now. And so it was really that one client who changed the trajectory. And no perimenopausal and menopausal women have ever stopped coming to me. It's just now I'm 54 going through the journey myself. So now my practice is only perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Yeah.
And has been for a long time. But yeah.
Well, that stat you shared in the beginning, a lot of women need help. So
a lot of women need help. And I'm grateful, I'm going to be doing actually for World Menopause Day, I'm going to be hosting a free live event with myself and 4 other amazing practitioners. I call them my Meno Queens. And that's going to be on October 16th. It's just a free event. If you go to my website, estherblum.com, enter your email to get on my list, you will get priority seating. It's a virtual event, but we are not selling anything. We are just here educating you, giving exposure to other practitioners to follow so you can continue to stay educated and empowered.
Yeah. Thank you for all of the work that you continue to do. It's much needed. I've learned so much by even opening myself up to these conversations while trying to figure out what's going on with me. And our bodies are a miracle and we should take care of them. And
and you and I are going to talk offline about getting you support too, because I'm feeling it for you.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on.
The big silence. The big silence.